Hi, I'm Helena from Dream Weaver Jewellery. So today I'm going to show you how to make this really pretty little pendant. It's got a tricky woven section and also some curly swirly bits. I also just wanted to show you this little toolkit I've just bought off Amazon. It was only cheap, but it's a brand I use quite regularly, so I thought I'd have a little look. So basically we've got some little chain nose pliers there, some wire snips, some bent nose, which I find quite useful. Also there's a little pair of tweezers, some round nose, then we've got nylon pliers, and the best in my opinion are these little flat nose pliers. They're brill. They're quite wide and they're really smooth, so I'm quite liking this for the money. So in the last video I made a little woven bale frame, so you'll need to check that out if you haven't already, and it also shows you how to set the stone. I'll leave the links for those two videos in the description below. So we're going to just bend these wires across the front of the bale, and it wants to just sit about halfway up. I'm just going to kind of rub it round with the finger, putting a little bit of pressure on, making that initial curve. You can see there how I pressed my finger down with some pressure and then pulled the wires off, and I've got them between my other finger and thumb. The top wire here had just kind of bobbed over the front one. I didn't really like it, so I'm just going to pull that over, hold that in place with my right hand. Always putting that thumb pressure on, so you're holding the bit that you like in place at all times. And that's the first little bit done. So we're going to support the nice curl between finger and thumb on the right hand there, and then we're going to start bending these wires over and round. Now this particular wire is really quite tough and I was struggling a little bit with it. It's not my usual brand. So we're just going to keep rolling it until we can post it back through and get them round those frame wires. At this point you're going to use your kind of middle left hand finger to push the back of the curl at that point, and then kind of roll it round. Just be really careful not to bend your frame wires. This is quite tricky for a beginner. This was giving me some trouble when I've been weaving for years, so sometimes it's just the wire. I shan't be using this brand again. I didn't like it at all. It's very, very stiff to use. It's much more like half hard wire when we should be using dead soft. So if your wires get all bent out of shape like these ones, just going to grab these little nylon pliers, and you basically put some pressure on either side. Keep twisting and pull it through a few times, and that'll just help to straighten out those wires for you. So I decided at this point I was going to go round for a second time, so we're just going to start manoeuvring. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why I have the most disgusting nails, because I'm forever scratching the wires and pushing them around. It's often why I've got a divot in my nails, but never mind. So I'm just keeping working these, trying to support the curves and any little bits that I've got in place as I go. So I'm going to grab those wide flat pliers to have a go with here, because that bottom wire is giving me a bit of trouble. So I like those really wide flat pliers because you can just get in there and give them a little squeeze without marking your wire too badly. They're actually really useful for a beginner. Felt like it needed one more little squeeze because they hadn't quite wrapped around where I wanted them. So I'm just going to grab my nylon pliers again because they're getting a bit tatty. You really want to try and not let your square wire twist, because I find once it's gone once it looks awful, and you actually have to twist it to kind of make it look better, which we'll do later. So I was having a play with this, that's why my wires are a bit bent again, so they shouldn't look like that on yours, but I'm just going to basically start curling that wire round until I've got an attractive shape for where my weave's going to go. So I'm going to repeat that on this wire. It was giving me some trouble because it was really bent out of shape, so there's my nylons again, just getting in there. Oops, gone off camera again, I'm good at that. There we go. Right, so we're back where we started. So it's kind of rubbing and pushing and scratching that wire. And again, I'm supporting with my right hand to keep those other pieces in place. Just keep fiddling with this until you've got the shape that you're going for. This is still a little bit wrong at this point, so I just kept fiddling with it until I was happy. Okay, so I've skipped forward a little bit, I've straightened it out and got it where I wanted it, and now we're going to start to weave. So when weaving on a curve, this shorter piece is going to need less wraps than the longer piece. Therefore, we're going to start weaving on this longer curve. So let's grab our bobbin. I've got a little bit of weaving wire on here. I'm using 0.315mm for this because it's just what I had in my studio. And we're going to go around that bottom wire about 3 times. Now this is going to be a tricky weave, so stick with it. But basically we're going to go round 3 times on that wire. If you've heard my videos before, you'll know me talking about keeping the weaving wire at 90 degrees to your base wire as much as you can. So this is what we're going to try and achieve here. And when you've got 3 or 4 on there, we're just going to come in and snip off that little tail. So we're going to get some flat pliers or the chain nose and squish that little tail end onto the frame wire. I'm sorry the video quality's gone out a bit here. I don't quite know what was happening. It's not as crisp as usual. But anyway, what we're going to do is slide that down. And you're probably going to have a fight with it, but you need to get it as deep into that V as possible, whichever way you can get it into that top end. I tend to push it down a little bit with my chain nose pliers. So you can just about see here that we need to cross over to make a figure 8 weave. So we're going to come up through between the 2 and over the back of that wire. So you've got to bring it round. And in order to get it at 90 degrees, you're probably going to have to pull it up quite a long way. And you're going to have to get behind it with the fingernail there and wrap as shown. And then we're going to do that 2 times, I think, possibly 3. Oops, I got a bit tangled here, just ignore that bit. Again, the trick to neat weaves is to get in there with your pliers and make sure it's all tidy. So we've gone 3 round the first and 2 round the second. And I apologise if this is confusing, so I keep twisting it round, but I was just getting it where I needed it to be. So now we're going to go round that lower wire another 3 times. You've got to kind of loop it underneath through and then pull it back on itself. So again, let's squeeze all those weaves together. The video still seems to be struggling with quality for some reason. Get them pushed up right in that base. You're not going to see that first start bit, so it's not such a big worry if it's not perfect. So I'm just using a slightly different technique when I'm looping my wire around here because it's very tricky to get in there. So basically you're looping it around, leaving it loose and then pulling it up into the position that you want it in. So just take your time and just weave on a little bit further. I've obviously skipped ahead here because on this bottom section now what we need to do is wrap around 4 times because we're going to create a fan shape. So it's 4 times around the bottom and then only once around the top wire. And that's basically going to spread the wires out across the bottom frame and leave us that nice fan shape. So let's just warp speed for a minute so we can get a bit further on. It should hopefully be looking like this. This should have gotten quite a lot easier as you get towards these frame wires. So now we're just going to be doing a few wraps around each wire, because now we're going straight, we don't need to worry too much about the fan, so I think we'll do 4 around top and bottom wire at this point. So we're just going to continue on, so we've got another few millimetres of weave, because that's going to be the bit that wraps around the back of your frame. So now our curve should hopefully look like that, and we're going to bend these side frame wires across just to make sure we've got enough weave so that it finishes it off nicely. I was happy with that, so I'm now going to get rid of this tail end of weaving wire. And if you put your thumb right on it and twiddle it around a few times, it snaps off, and I find it's so much easier than getting in there with your flush cutters, and it doesn't leave that nasty little end. So that's my method of getting in there and getting rid of that weaving wire. So that looks attractive from the front, so we're going to whip it over, hold it in place either side, and whichever way is comfortable, you're just going to snip off those tails again. These are not the best flush cutters, I'll warn you. They're okay, but I mean, they're not great. They do the job, let's put it that way. So let's get in there with our chain nose pliers. Remember to support with your thumb, so you're pushing the wire against your thumb rather than against the frame. So we don't want to mar any of these delicate weaving wires, because you can actually snap them if you squeeze too hard, and then it's going to look a right mess and you've just ruined what you've made. So very gently squeeze in with little presses. If you put too much pressure on, it feels like it's really resisting. Just release and go back in there again. And that's looking alright from the front, except one of my little weaves has gone astray. Yeah, we're looking good from the front. Again, you can just adjust those little weaves if they've moved. That's not a problem. So let's figure out what we're going to do with these side wires. I think I'm going to post it down through that hole there. Now, I never actually know what I'm going to do. I just kind of go with it. So I apologise if it's a bit scatty, but that's part of my artistic interpretation. So again, try and roll them round. As I mentioned before, this wire's really stiff and I was struggling a bit with it. And you can see how it's kind of bent a little, quite a sharp bend there. So just get my finger in and try and press it rounder. That's just going to help you get it through. So I'd rather not use tools to do this, because you can make all sorts of dings in your wire, which then looks a mess. If you can do it with your fingers and your thumb and squeezing it all together, then that is my preferred choice. You can grab those little nylons as well and press with your thumb and give it a bit of a wriggle. You could grab the very tips of the tail wires with any of your other flatter pliers if you wanted to. But I just keep working this until it rolls round into place. So I chuffed about this quite a lot off camera because it was fairly boring. And now we're going to bring these wires back over the front. You may need to straighten them again with your nylon pliers, so go ahead and do that if they've got a bit marked. And I'm going to start making a bit of a curve here. Notice how I put my thumbnail on the bit that I like, and then kind of, this was giving me a bit of trouble again. So just bend and support the bit that you like, and you can roll it through your finger again. If your wire is as stiff as this, you will just have to keep adjusting, but most dead soft wire isn't as tough as this to work with, so don't panic. You can get your pliers in and really gently sort of adjust the shape as necessary. I was just trying to get these front curls to kind of overlap the ones we made around the frame to just make it look a little bit nicer. And you may well have to just keep adjusting until you're happy with your shapes. I decided this inner one I was going to make a little spiral. So hold that little curve in with your thumbnail, readjust, bring it round, readjust, bring it round. And that's how you make curls without marking the wire. It's also how you ruin your nails, but hey, it doesn't really matter. So that's looking quite pretty, and I started wriggling the other one into place. I might just make that curl just that little bit smaller, because I don't really want to cover over the weave. I just kind of want something a bit semi-symmetrical down the side there. Let's straighten that out again. And then true to form, after I'd spent an age making that bigger curl, I decided I wanted it to be twisted because it looks pretty. So you grab any of your pliers, doesn't really matter which, and kind of put a little bit of tension on either side. So you're pulling away from your pliers essentially. I'm just going to twist a few times till it looks pretty. Just be careful not to over twist because the wire will snap. So I'm going to put that curl pretty much back in place where it was. So just straighten it out a bit again because I've made a mess. So rub that wire with your thumb and rolling it over. And this will be stiffer even more now because we've done what's called work hardening, which is when you work the wire, it will get stiffer as it goes. So again, thumbs in position to hold the bits that we like. You might have to press some parts out again. You may well have to use your pliers as well. But I'm kind of liking this pretty little curve there. I'll just keep adjusting until I'm happy with it. This twisted curve just didn't feel very secure, so I'm just pressing it slightly flatter against the frame there. And there's a little bit that's not curvy enough for me, so I'm just going to get in there and sort that bit out. I do like to try and get my curves to flow as smoothly as possible, because any little kinks just kind of draw the eye and I don't like them. Now we can just get in there and snip that tail end off and fasten it back to the frame again. Sometimes your curls might fight you a little bit and push your stone out of position, so I like to just take it out. And you can see here that that little tail's pointing downwards. Now I want it to point literally the opposite way, so it's not quite back on itself, it's kind of upwards a little bit, because then it doesn't show from the front. And it also won't push your stone out of position. So let's just grab our pliers and just give it another little gentle squeeze just to make sure it's attached to the frame well, and then we can pop our stone back in. Figure out which way it went in, and I just do this with my fingers so we don't mark the wire too much, because it's still not completely secured at this stage because I'm going to oxidise it later and it's coming out anyway. So let's just move on to the last one then. I thought that little curl needed just to be a little bit smaller, and that wire is absolutely driving me mad because it won't curl where I want it to curl. So again, you just have to keep adjusting, lots of little mini tiny adjustments until you're happy with the shape. And obviously when you've got it where you want it, we can start thinking about attaching that one to the frame. I like that little gap, I thought that was quite pretty. So we're squeezing it in place, snipping that little tail off, and just repeating the steps we've done previously. Oh, she's pretty. That's going to be a nice one when it's oxidised. So, if you're going to set your stone at this point, you want to give it all a good squeeze, and this is pretty damn secure, so I was happy with it. If you're not sure, obviously have a look at my stone setting video again. I'll put the link above if I can. I also have an oxidising and polishing video if you'd like to check that out too. And finally, let's just have a little look at the tools. So the wire snips are crap, not that happy with those. The nylons quite liked because they're smaller than usual. I thought they were quite neat and tidy, they were quite good. The chain nose again, not bad for a beginner set or a spare set. I might keep those as my travel set because they're quite little. The ones that were really good were these flat nose. I was really happy with those. If you can get a wider flat nose like that that's really neat, I would highly suggest a pair of those. I'll leave a link in the description below. If you enjoyed this tutorial and want to have another go at something similar, this is Brooke. She's a PDF tutorial that you can purchase and download from my website and my Etsy shop. And it also shows you how to do a little fold over stone setting, which is quite fun. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found it helpful. If you have any questions, please comment below and I'll do my best to answer them. If you'd like to subscribe to my channel, I'd be really grateful, and I'll be making a lot more free tutorials in the coming months. You can also purchase written PDF tutorials from me that you can follow along at your own pace. These have loads of pictures and explanations to help you learn some new techniques, and each one is aimed at learning a new skill. I'd also really love for you to join my Facebook group. It's called Wire Weaving for Beginners, and you can share your work and see all of everybody's latest creations. And finally, if you'd like to support my channel further, you might also consider hitting the Buy Me a Coffee link below. Here you can make a small donation so I can continue spending time making new free tutorials for you. Your support means the world to me. Thank you so much. Bye for now.